Thank you. All right, everybody. Welcome to the May Parks and Green Space PAPREN meeting. I'm just going to get my screen shared here. Thanks for coming a week early, too. I know the change in schedule due to Memorial Day might have been a little tricky for some people, but I'm glad we were able to work it out so we could still have a meeting this month. So if you haven't already, which I didn't see anybody because I jumped in late, but go ahead and throw your name, affiliation, and any special interests into chat there. Sometimes we do it in person, but I think because we're starting a little late, we'll just throw it into chat just to make it a little easier. And then I want to take some time to introduce the work co-chairs. Is Rich in? I didn't see him before.
No, he might be missing today.
Okay. And then I'd like to introduce, so Rich Christiana, he is one of our co-chairs. He is not here today. He's from Appalachian State University. And then I'm going to let Dr. Gastat here say hello.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for coming, and thank you, Lois, for speaking to us today. Yeah, I'm one of the co-leads. My interests, I'm an epidemiologist by training, interests in the social and environmental determinants of physical activity and leading to cardiovascular disease risk and parks and green spaces as well. So welcome. Thank you.
Awesome. And then I'm going to let Dr. Slater introduce herself here as well.
Yeah, hi, Sandy Slater. I'm at Concordia University in Wisconsin. I'm a professor and director of our undergraduate public health program. And by training, I am a health policy analyst. I focus my research on how different aspects of the environment and policies influence health behavior. And that includes looking at parks and green space and different ways that we can impact land use policies regarding parks and green space and how they can influence different health behavioral outcomes, including physical activity.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. Again, if you haven't had a chance, go ahead and put your name and affiliation into the chat there, and we're just going to keep moving along. So a little quick agenda today. We're going to have our presentation followed by our Q&A, and then check in, see if there's any project updates from anybody. It does look like we have a pretty small group, so we'll see if that comes up. We'll do a quick open mic, and then we'll talk about next meetings and upcoming presentations. There is some things we'd like to hear from you about whether or not we start our summer break. So we're going to hand it on over to Lois Brink here. She's a professor of landscape architecture at the University of Colorado, Denver, and she's going to be talking about her schoolyard research here today. Professor Brink's knowledge and experience of playground development, coupled with her 30 years of landscape architecture work, is critical to other similar initiatives. During her stewardship of Learning Landscapes, a $50 million design and construction initiative that completed 96 redeveloped elementary schoolyards in the fall of 2012. The organization made substantial progress in multiple school districts in Colorado and across the country. Professor Brink spent last year as the National Advisor for the Space to Grow Schoolyard Redevelopment Initiative in Chicago. So I'm going to go ahead and let her take over here and start her presentation.
Okay, I will see if it will let me share my desktop. All right, can you guys see my desktop?
Yes.
All right, let's go into full screen. So so thank you for letting me do this. I don't know a whole lot about all of you except that Rob Layton urged me to do this. So I thought what I would do, I pulled two things together. One are some slides from pre-COVID, right? All the exciting things that happened and then everything died with presentations. But this is a good one that at least I think can present to you where I see schoolyards fitting into health and wellness and sort of the future. Yes, it's got a little bit of a landscape architecture bent to it, but I have done a lot of research, and so I'll be talking about that. I'll end with some slides on the most recent research that we've been doing, looking at the economic benefits and determinants of learning landscapes now that they've been complete for 12 years. So I continue to get, particularly Philadelphia, new schools getting into underserved communities and greening schoolyards, and then using Denver as this amazing wealth of data to continue to do research. So with that, I'm going to get this thing to move forward. Okay, so for me, the problem, obviously, for all of us, a healthy planet and a healthy people is what we want. For me, schoolyards becomes this sort of sustainable armature within cities that have huge amount of potential. Boston, which is a school I researched the city, it also has a completed schoolyard landscape. And I think what's interesting is I really look at the importance of this paradigm shift that goes from the idea of a schoolyard as a one-of-a-kind built landscape to more of a landscape system. That's even a similar thing I think that we're trying to get people with parks to start to think about. For me, as a practitioner slash educator, I look at this idea of how do you really use sort of graduate education to develop the idea of best practices, like moving beyond just a design standard, but really looking at best practices that focus on outcome-based post-occupancy research, which if any of you know landscape architects, they never want to think about what happens after they finish it. They just want to go on and do something else. Also very much interested in this idea of mutually inclusive design process, which is aesthetics and children, bringing them into this. And then, although I won't spend a lot of time on it today, urban infrastructure systems, in particular, stormwater infrastructure is a huge one in my work. And so as we think about this, I thought this would be a helpful diagram that kind of looks at this idea of neighborhood social processes and how schoolyards are part of a really important urban infrastructure. So much of what I fight is that sort of siloed approach, both within a school district and then within cities, in terms of what they see schools being, and more importantly, what they see schoolyards being. So working on this idea of school policies and programs, infrastructure, and then the overall outcome is children's physical activity, nutrition, social well-being, and academic performance. So all those things the schoolyard can support and help out. So learning landscapes, my baby that started, this is just a sort of a great before and after picture that sort of looks at a typical, this is Columbian Elementary in Denver, pre-building, and then 2003 when we built a little rain garden, and then you can see it today. So this really idea of participatory landscapes that support outdoor learning with academic and physical education and socialization tools for school-age children. So that is a big piece. I focus on elementary school only. It seems to be, I think, where there is the greatest need and urgency. This image of Philadelphia, again, the gray spots are schoolyards in Philly, and then the red ones are ones that I've been working on. And I just show this because I think a lot of people forget that on average in the United States, schoolyards represent the largest landowner in the school districts. And their distribution, unlike parks even, has this amazing geographic patchwork throughout the city. Again, looking at elementary schools because there's so many of them. And really what has happened in Denver is Denver's Parks and Recreation has adopted the learning landscapes and added it into their overall master plan as breathing spaces. So they acknowledge it as a really important piece. The other sort of side of this that I see with a paradigm shift is this idea of connecting communities. These are 3 schools which we just submitted. It's only taken 8 years, but we've just submitted funding through the federal earmark community program funding. And then we also have state funding. It is in North Philadelphia, which I'm sure most of you know is one of the poorest cities. And North Philadelphia is the most economically disadvantaged communities of color with some of the highest crime rates in the United States. but they are wonderful children. They are wonderful communities, and they are trying very hard to figure out how to elevate their communities. And so we're really looking at how do you think about this concept of schoolyards and how that can really elevate the sort of community efficacy that's going on. And so these are just some of my graduate students' designs, looking at ways to get people into the communities. How do we redevelop the schools? We are very much about having our students come and work one-on-one with the students and understand their needs and desires. And then we also love to be able to have the children tell us more about their communities, what they think is beautiful, what is not, what they want to see change. And so this one, I think, is probably more relevant for all of you, but it really sort of sums up how I look at the schoolyard and the design of the schoolyard as this sort of this tripod of academic education. We already know that children who learn science outdoors increase their literacy and their use of scientific terminology by journaling outside. Physical activity, we all know about that one in terms of increased physical activity outside. I did receive back in 2012 an NIH grant, and we did look at physical activity on schoolyards. We also looked at density, a microanalysis using GIS of activities on the schoolyard, and found that the closer proximity and denser the elements were in a schoolyard, the more active children were. And my analogy is that children are like a ball in a pinball machine. And so the closer things are, they really like going back and forth with things more than they do just staying at one activity and playing there. Health, social, and life skills has become increasingly more important. And so then you just sort of see this sort of collection of different elements that we like to have in the schoolyard. And then, you know, what we've been starting to look at from a research standpoint, these are our priorities. While our work with NIH did prove increases in physical activity, we're trying to figure out ways to get school districts to understand the value of funding greening and redesigning their schoolyards. We believe it's connected to academic success. We know it's connected to this idea of cooperative play and reductions in bullying and more supportive play. It also certainly helps independent play, and it also helps for those two things to happen concurrently without fear of reprisals or anything else. Also, we're starting to look at the idea of gender-supported activities, trying to move away from boys and girls into more male or female attributes, and thinking about how can schoolyards really celebrate that physical activity, emotional well-being, and then obviously sensory experiences. So this brings me to, how am I doing on time? I'm maybe talking too fast, I'm sorry. So this is a report then. So all that's been going on. I have been working with the Children in Nature Network about schoolyards for some time. And we were able to have an opportunity to basically, they gave us funding to say, we all know that there are these economic benefits and social and health benefits for children in renovated schoolyards. We have a lot of data around DPS because they've been there. Basically, we finished 96 schoolyards in 2012. And so they basically gave us some funding, which rarely happens, and said, do a data dive and see what you come up with. So we didn't have to necessarily have a hypothesis other than we knew that there were benefits there. And we wanted to try to figure out whether or not they were statistically significant. This is a 2-year study. We've just completed the study. I'm showing you snippets from the draft report because we're in the process with Children in Nature Network and a couple other people getting ready to launch the publication and publish this information. So this is a sneak preview for all of you. Don't share it with anybody or I'll get in big trouble. What we looked at then for this is really sort of looking across all different kinds of outcomes and benefits. And so what you're looking at here in terms of the executive summary, what we were able to come up with, and AutoCase was our economist that we worked on. AutoCase does a lot of work in the environmental arena, and they've been starting to support built landscapes and looking at performance standards for those. But as you can see under learning, we're pretty excited about the statistically significant increases that we're seeing in math, that we're seeing in growth and in writing growth annually, as well as a reduction in student mobility. And I can talk a little bit about that. A little bit of increase in student performance, and then a slight reduction in student truancy. Now, one thing I will share with you are, in this study, we decided that what we would do is only use open source data for this first wave of analysis. We did not get into human subjects review and approval, so we did we're not following pupil specific data over time. That will hopefully be our next level of this, where we can really do a deeper dive. But we felt it was important right now to just say, let's take a look at this broader expanse of data, and let's see what's out there. On the environment, I think everyone knows, in terms of the amount of carbon that is sequestered, the reduction in ambient temperature, the amount of air pollution sequestered, those are all fairly traditional aspects. On the economic side, which again, where we're trying to help schoolyards and school districts learn, there were a couple things that we saw. One was an annual average increase in revenue, which means that these students were coming based on this longitudinal cross-sectional analysis because of basically the value, appearance of the schoolyard. So they are coming from private schools, charter schools. So this was, we felt, a really important piece for school districts to give them some incentives to be able to move forward. We also learned that, in taking a look at this, our overall landscape cost, $600,000 is an average. The school district, starting in 2003 and then 2008, were able to go to the voters and get voter-approved general obligation bonds to start to fund these schoolyards. Our first wave of schoolyards, they were done with public-private partnership money. We raised $10 million to do 22 schools. And when people started to see the value in that, that was pretty amazing. It's also been a great way for the school districts to leverage and get new dollars to fix deferred maintenance things that are always a tough one to be able to get. And that's where that last bullet point comes in. For every dollar spent on a learning landscape, $25 were realized in this general obligation funding. So a couple other things on the health side of it. Obviously, now Denver is arid, semi-arid, excuse me. We do have irrigation, but once that landscape and green infrastructure was put in, we were able to start to work with food and nutrition services to start to look at some of the nutritional aspects. We were able to launch a farm program. We had to get the FDA to agree to let us move produce directly from the gardens and the farm directly into the cafeteria without going to a cooler for 6 hours, which is pretty ridiculous, but that's thanks Cisco for that. We know about that one. Right now, over 55% of our learning landscapes have school gardens. And then we do have 13 of those have a garden to cafeteria program where the children can grow their cherry tomatoes and then they can sell them to their cafeteria, directly to the cafeteria. So there may be 6,000 cherry tomatoes in their lunch program that day, and they don't know which one is theirs, but it definitely, we have seen anecdotally that it's made a big difference with increase in children eating fresh fruits and vegetables. This is a little bit of maybe a repeat, but just to kind of show you that breakdown within the school district. and I think this is a good example, this pie chart, of why I think elementary schools, which is this bluish color, are so important, because they really do have that ecological patchwork across countries. Our schoolyards have gateways, gathering spaces, shade structures, places for children to read outside, age-appropriate play equipment, outdoor classrooms. We do have grass playing fields. We have public and student art, vegetable gardens, habitat areas, and nature play. And our schoolyards are open to the public before school, after school, and then during holidays and basically non-school days. So this will give you a little bit. So we have been, as part of our research that we're doing right now, we have CAD drawings for all 96 schools. We have GIS drawings for 50 of the schools. And so what you're looking at here is just some of that information. The two graphics at the bottom show Barnum pre and post. And then there is a little chart there that shows that site area comparison. We are struggling with the idea of pea gravel and fines. From our perspective, it acts like an impervious surface, but we're trying to work out those nuances. Above in that graph, it just kind of shows you that overall, most of our schools, they still have an all-purpose field, which tends to be larger. And that's just because of that square footage. But then you can start to see a breakdown of walks and trails, gardens, native habitat areas at 14%. So it gives you a little bit of an idea of the sort of range of what's going on. So then what we have here is, as we started to try to look at outcomes, and we started with children and nature's outcomes in order to do this analysis, and we ended up with these 4 buckets. If I could get my little guy gone, you can see them down there: learning, health and wellness, environmental, and my computer won't close that thing, so I can't see the bottom one. Oops, student well-being and learning. Okay. So then we started to try to look at what are those positive impacts that we're looking for, both short and long term. That's a lot of information, but more importantly, we'll go here, because what we started to do in this process then is to say, all right, we know now all our data buckets, and we're going to start to look at what our data types are. And then we're going to start to work with all these different departments within Denver Public Schools to find the data. And so that took about 1.5 years, going through a lot of it. It was interesting. It's given us a lot of lessons learned for what we've got, what we still need. Like so many school districts, they don't keep their files organized as well as we would like to. So ideally, we were trying to get data from 2003 to 2019. And our data varies a little bit between some of those different periods, but it was pretty productive. The district is very excited about it. They're trying to find ways to increase their funding to maintain learning landscapes. So there was a lot of interest on their part working with us on this. Okay, so then, oh my God, come back, sorry. Close that. Okay, so what you can see here then, as we're going through, facilities, or gray means we had not been able to come up with any data. Again, we're not doing it at a pupil level. We're just doing this at a larger level. The areas in pink are sort of our next phase that we're going to try to do more exploring. And then green is what we were been able to start to get. And so you can see on achievement, the different components. So the interesting pieces of these is wherever we pretty much did find the data, we were finding positive outcomes, which was really great. That was very beneficial for us. Right, so now it needs to go to the next one. Come on. Sorry, for some reason. Come on. I know that's not the last slide. I may have to get out of full view because it's not cooperating. No, it's going the other direction. Sorry. Interesting. Okay, I'm going to have to escape out of that to find out why it thinks that the rest of the slides are gone. Where are they? Oh my God. All right. Hold on 1 second while I have, maybe I could take a question while I just go right to the report, since I'm having a little bit of a technical difficulty here.
It's okay, take your time. I'll go ahead and read just a question we got from the chat from Jeanette Gestat. She said, great results. How do you measure the increases? So an ecological analysis, average scores for schools. Do you have an answer for that? How you measure those increases?
So I do, and this is where I wish I had Stefan from AutoCase. I am a landscape architect, but basically what we were looking at is the Colorado Department of Education keeps extensive data on all schools over decades. And so we were able to get in there and take a look at those. We were also able to use the control schools in Aurora School District and Adams 12 School District, which were our original control schools in our NIH grant, and to be able to kind of compare those, because the difficult part, with learning landscapes is they're all finished. And so you really can't have a control school the way you'd like to. And then the pre and post part gets a little bit tricky because those schools are being built over time. So that was the one way that we started to try to do that with our achievement statistics. On the environmental one, that was, we had all the GIS data and the land use analysis. So again, AutoCase was able to, and there is a special name for it. And if I could get my computer to let me look at my recent file. I'm gonna make everyone throw up let me try to just get to the meeting. Well, let me finish this and then we'll get back, because it might help with some of those answers. So we're just going to jump right into results. So again, let's see if I can. So there are sort of looking at, so what you can see then is it was very complex in terms of our data availability, but they were able to sort of take that. So as it says here, they took a look at using this sort of cross-sectional statistical regression model at one point in time. So they used 2018. We ended up stopping at 2018 because COVID just threw everything into such a monkey wrench. We really didn't know how to be able to do that. So that was a very helpful way for us to be able to sort of take a look at that data. We were then able to, if I come down, look at this idea of characteristics of spaces. So this is Castro and Beach Court. And the thing that's interesting with these two schoolyards is, as you can see, one's a little bit more complex, has more elements, and they may not be all different elements, but there's a complexity to the schoolyard. And then what was interesting is as we go down and look at our statistical enrollment statistical significance, we see that the number of CAD entries or the density of that schoolyard started to make a significant statistic. Parks, swings are really important as an attractor. So we're seeing it there. Ball fields, not so important. And so then we had a couple little strange things in here. And these were still sort of working out a little bit. We were using data from our own analysis, and then the Denver Public Schools Maintenance has their own accounting of square footages. So that's another one where we're looking and very excited about this idea of helping everybody with that nomenclature. We all talk about schools and parks or parks and green space, but we're not very good coming up with a nomenclature that everybody can embrace. Everyone has a slightly different definition of something. Is it a native area, or is it an ecological garden? Is it a community garden, or is it a school garden? And that really kind of throws a monkey wrench into the research part of it. And then as we kind of wrap up, these are the kids with their summer harvest that they're about to take into the school cafeteria. Just a little end of school sort of fun. But we really were pleased to see the kinds of sort of these nutritional health components. Thanks to the work that we've done with the school district, they've just finished a 1 acre greenhouse. They're starting to grow all their own vegetables, in particular tomatoes that come from Mexico, so they can, one, save money, get fresher produce. So I think what's been interesting when we talk about sustainability is the way this schoolyard greening has really branched out into so many different aspects of what we're trying to do. Now, the revenue, as you can see here in the garden and cafeteria program, isn't huge, but that's okay. You know, what's really important is that this kind of program is just starting to build and getting real momentum within the school district. But again, you can't do these kinds of things until you get all of the schoolyards finished. And that gets back to some of these issues of scalability. School districts don't want to do new educational programs or physical activity programs unless everybody has a new schoolyard. Oh, this is Teresa Hefner. She is the head of food nutrition with her tomatoes in her greenhouse. She's very proud. And I started working with her in 2012 when we started looking at and did a study of what percentage of seasonally fresh fruits and vegetables we could grow. So, okay, moving along here. I'm sorry.
Can I interrupt?
Sure.
So what does that revenue mean? So what are you getting the revenue from what?
So that revenue is produce sold.
So you're selling the produce that the kids grow?
So two things. Let's go back to this one. This one, the children sell the produce. These proceeds go back to helping them maintain the garden. So those dollars go right back to the kids, and so that they can buy plants and seeds for that next year.
Right. So they're having a garden day or garden stand, and people are buying their vegetables.
No, they're selling it to the cafeteria.
Oh, the cafeteria is paying for it.
Yeah, that's what's so incredible. The cafeteria buys it and pays them for it.
Wow.
They also do free produce and everything. But what was so important with this was helping children make a connection between what they eat in their cafeteria and what they grow outside. So it's a small number, but again, it has great significance. These numbers is the cost that the school district was able to offset because they're growing their own produce. So this is a cost savings to them by the amount of food that's being generated and being generated locally and fresh without being shipped across the world by Cisco. I hope no one likes Cisco in the room. So then I know there was the question on, I think, on how we did these calculations. Was that what you were saying, John, I think? Maybe not. I hope not, because that gets confusing for me a little bit. But, so just probably kind of ending with this one is, these are, and when we look at funding, which I know maybe is not necessarily all of your bailiwick, but if we can't find money to build green spaces, we're in big trouble. So these are just an idea of the costs, capital costs for learning landscapes. And then down here is an example for 2008 and 2003 with those 300 million, 200 million general obligation bonds, where those dollars were going. And as you can see, itty bitty little learning landscapes are over here, structural repair, infrastructure. So, and in these cases, and we're still, there was a citizen advisory council for each one of these bond projects. And in each case, in 2003 and 2008, Learning Landscapes was ranked 5th in the requests for these improvements. Also in 2008, if you all remember when the sky fell, and we were in a financial mess, the voters overwhelmingly by 70% approved the general obligation bond for the school district. So part of all of this has developed a really great relationship with all of them. So in summary, with all of this, this is sort of our limits of study, what we haven't been able to find or need to be able to go to IRB approval. Advanced placement enrollment is going to be a really important one, as is graduation and dropout rates. Equity index, again, we want to be able to use student level data as we start to look at that. It broke my heart to find out that, and I don't know if this is in other school districts across the country, but they no longer do physical education exams at schools, which I thought was amazing. So they have no way to track physical health without that. And so we're going to have to try to figure out some other mechanisms, and I don't really want to do BMI or all those things, but that's going to require a little bit more time. Community use, the school district has 20 years of student and family satisfaction studies for every single school. And I'm going to have to sit in someone's office for probably 2 weeks to get that data out of them. So again, it's paper, but I think that's going to be huge data to be able to demonstrate that change in people's attitudes around these green schoolyards. And then lastly, expulsion rates, again, we'll need student level data. And so I'll stop sharing there. I hope I didn't go too fast, and happy to answer all kinds of questions and do whatever you like.
No, that was wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing some insider information a little bit for us as well here. I'm just going to jump into the chat here and kind of ask some of the questions that got asked. And if anyone wants to jump in to kind of do follow-up questions, feel free to do that as well. But Dr. Gustat was also interested if they were doing any like learning lessons or cooking with the gardens in addition to selling the vegetables back to the school.
So what we have been doing with that that's been a little bit more of a one-off right now. So we have Slow Food Organization is one, and we have another one, Cookie Matters, that is working with some individual schools. And what we've been finding is more effective. There was one picture of Garden Place Academy. We've been trying to make sure that all schools have outdoor sinks and prepped areas. So, because one of the most successful things that we can do is to be able to do a spring salad, because we can do that all outside in the garden, and we don't have to get into food and nutrition and union issues around food health protocols. So that's probably the main thing we've been trying to do. But again, part of it is trying to build the number of gardens that we've got so that we have a little bit more support at the district level for them to be able to kind of work with us to change some of those policies.
And that leads into our next question, and you might have just answered it, but Bola was curious how you bypass kind of that FDA regulatory stuff, moving foods directly from the schoolyards into the cafeteria. You mentioned the sinks and stuff like that, but is there anything else you want to add to that?
Yes. So we were able to, Food and Nutrition Services, Learning Landscapes, and then Slow Food USA, we got a Kellogg grant to work directly with FDA to request changes and modifications to their food handling guidelines for that particular project. And it took a year, because I mean they literally wanted us to take the food out of the garden, go put it in a cooler for 6 hours, and then take it out of the cooler and bring it into the cafeteria, because they're all about storage and movement. So yes, we did go through all that. I would be happy to try to see. I'll talk to Teresa to see if she has, because they still are doing it, and they still have all those food handling protocols, and the cafeteria does have those protocols in place, and so they don't just like take it all. They do go through it and make sure that what they're selecting is okay.
Very cool. Okay, so Laura was interested on how much data are public sectors requiring, since the proxy or aggregate data is all positive. What more do they want? With the triple aim concept, equity, caring for the land, and health, this project hits all three and could potentially tap into many pots of funding.
Mm-hmm.
Laura, did you have any other things you wanted to add to that more of a statement? But I see you unmuted. Maybe we're still having trouble hearing you.
Well, I could let her know. Yeah, we're really excited about this, and we are. And I think when I gave this report to Children Nurture Network, the woman we were working with, her eyes kind of rolled back, because it's a lot, right? And we don't necessarily have it teased out in terms of the different pots and where it wants to go. Myself and Peter Anthemaden, who's a professor in geography, we're really excited. The school district, food nutrition is everyone's really excited about how we can start to move these different components forward separately, because it's just giving you enough of a body of evidence, to be able to say, okay, here's our teaser, you guys, God damn it, now give us more money so we can do something with it, whether it's programs or whether it's more research, whatever. So yeah.
Laura, I do see that you are having trouble, so if you do have any follow-up questions, feel free to throw them in and I'll jump down to them. Jeanette was making a comment about how ball fields might be more important to older kids, but not so much elementary school kids, who usually maybe need more guidance for those spaces, which is a good insight.
Yeah, I think that would be true. At a middle school level, they are, I think, more important. I think what we learned in the NIH study is that elementary school children don't really need a lot of space, and in fact, when there's more space, the individuals who are out monitoring the children start to freak out because they're too far away. So it and I think for us in Denver, unlike New Orleans where it rains a lot, and actually, well, I can't say that right now because we are being deluged with water right now. So everything looks really great. It's green, it's happy, but typically, to be able to start to say, okay, you don't need an acre or an acre and a half field. You're perfectly fine with a half acre. Those little guys can run around like great. As long as you take care of it, you're in great shape.
It's really interesting that you bring that up. My wife is a kindergarten teacher, and most of the stories she brings home is from the schoolyards and all the funny things that she hears and sees during that.
Well, and I do, I guess one of the anecdotally, and again, we haven't been able to kind of put this together yet, is that it is that place where children learn how to socialize. And I do get concerned when children aren't allowed to navigate some of that on their own. But if you're going to have them navigate those things on their own, they have to have choices. So you have to have enough elements in a schoolyard so that if you want to go play with someone and no one will let you, you don't try to beat them up or they don't try to beat you up. You just say, okay, I'm gonna go play over here. Or I love swing so much, I'll queue up. I had teachers come up to me and went, oh my God, the 5th grade boys are queuing up to go on a swing. I can't believe it.
All right, we're gonna jump over to Bola here, who has her hand up. You can go ahead and unmute yourself when you're ready, Bola.
Okay, thank you. Fabulous presentation. So I am a MGV. Currently, the issue that we're having with partnering with schools is there's not a lot of school teachers or professionals that would be able to work the garden in that school. And I know that you had stated that they didn't want to come on board unless the majority of the schools were accepting of the community garden. So how are you going to implement someone within the school system to run the garden?
So, I think what we've been doing a couple things. We have been relying on external NGOs, who can help with the different gardens. What we have found is that if we can at least get the presence of a school garden. I have a school in North Philadelphia right now, Duckery, and we put in a little peace garden, which is a school food garden 3 years ago. They haven't used it yet. I had to bring goats to the school, and we brought the goats into the garden, and the teachers and the kids came out to see the goats. They were so excited. And then the teachers and the kids said, "Is this part of our school?" I was like, "Yeah, this is part of your school." So I think, I do think it's a little ass backwards maybe, but if we can start to kind of create the physical space for it to happen, the more we do that, I think the more I was at Ellis School in Denver 2 weeks ago, and the 3rd grade teacher was coming out, and she was going to do weather, and the kids had a little weather vane with them and a thermometer, but that garden's been there 10 years. So I think this stuff just takes time. You're trying to change a culture that's just really hard. But I don't think I gave you an answer. Other than we just gotta keep doing it.
No, you did, because I'm seeing that a lot of the things, when I bring in physical activity into the gardens, like yoga in the garden or eating in the garden, that will bring them out. And then they're like, voila, there's a garden. And then they learn. So no, I agree. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Get goats. Get a grant for goats. They're cheap. They're easy.
Yeah, I think that's the lesson here. All right, we're going to finish with one more question here. Well, I guess kind of 2 questions here from both Natasha and Jeanette. They're kind of combined. So Natasha says, you mentioned that many of these spaces are open for public and or maintained with Denver Parks. She's curious just how that's gone and if there are any standard agreements. And then just to add on to that, Jeanette asked if there were increased costs to the school for watering and maintenance with the semi-arid climate there.
Yes, there is. And that's one thing that we've been, the grounds and maintenance are the greatest people that ever lived. And we got to give them a new name, stewards of the world. I don't know, something. And they do have these added increased costs. They have not really done a return on investment. They don't fully understand the district, which is why we're trying to say, this is your increased revenue that you're getting because the outside of your schoolyards look good. I mean, if you just basically, right, that people want to come. And so that is a constant challenge for them, trying to look at those revenues. The one thing with having it open to the public that's been great, the school district, we did a lot of volunteer builds for all of the new learning landscapes. We had volunteer builds with the community, whether it was laying sod, painting asphalt, planting trees, and that has continued. The district has a horse trailer that's all set up with tools and wheelbarrows and places to get paint. That the school district will buy any group of volunteers all the supplies they need if they provide the labor to either paint the asphalt, plant trees, or fix things. So for them, there's been a little bit. There's also, this is another one that I need more data on, is a reduction in vandalism of other parts of the schoolyard or the building, because the neighborhood is taking ownership in what's there. So those become those really sort of tangential things out there. But when you pull all those together, it's huge. So, did I miss one? No. Okay, good.
I think you covered it.
Oh, I know, Parks and Rec. So one of the problems that the district has right now, and part of this is because we've got somewhat of a harsh environment. Trees aren't really supposed to be there unless you're a cottonwood down in the river bed. And everybody is donating memorial trees to all these schools. Every time someone dies, a school gets a tree. And grounds can't take care of them properly. They're starting to die off at a too fast of a rate, aside from the ash and borer thing. And so they are working with Parks and Recreation. The city of Denver is going to take over the manage of all new trees coming in, but they're limiting them to only 900 trees a year. So let's get a handle on this. Let's put 900 trees in a year and let's do it right. And we'll help you and we'll watch them and take care of them.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for the presentation and the answers you gave to all the questions we got. I know everyone here is interested in this stuff because it has to do with green space, it has to do with parks. Even if it's within schoolyards, we still love hearing about all the exciting things that are going on. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. Well, and yeah, I will keep Rob informed, and once we get sort of this stuff out publicly, we'll let you all know.
Yeah, please do. I would love to spread it throughout all of our members, and I'm sure there would be many people interested in it here.
Good.
So, Dr. Brink, if you'd like to leave, you're more than welcome to. You can also stay for the last few announcements we have here.
I think I might. I'm in Canada and I'm in a room with no heat, and it's kind of cold. So
well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. It was nice seeing all of you. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. So we're just going to finish here quick with a few more announcements. We don't have a ton of time. I just want to talk about mostly, we currently do not have a June speaker available. We did have someone who was going to do it, but they needed to move. So I'm just curious with those who are on the call. I'll also put this out to all of our members and maybe specifically email some people who come regularly, but do we want to start our summer break earlier? Do we want to have a member spotlight? What does anyone have any kind of ideas of what they'd like to do with June here?
Andy, were we just planning on taking off July?
Yes. So July is currently the only one off. We did have the speaker for June, but she had to move. And then Terry will be speaking in August.
I wonder if we should just take off June and July and then regroup in August.
Yeah, that works perfect for me. Does anyone else have any suggestions? All right. Well, that's what we'll go with. We'll take June and July off and then come back strong in August with Terry. So her information I'll get out there soon just to get it in your heads. But we do have some time for that. And then additionally, the last thing of today, I do want to remind you that the April network call is this Wednesday on the 24th at 12 Eastern, 11 Central. If you are a member, you got an email with joining information, and we're going to talk about the evaluation survey and the results from that. So, and then we'll have network updates and open mic time following that presentation. So that's all I have for you all. Thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed the presentation as much as I did, and we'll see each other soon.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.